Yes, 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 we're back, we're back. It is another Tuesday evening, and you are listening to Soul Perspectives here on CKUT 90.3 FM. My name is Kym Dominique-Ferguson, and I'm in studios with
Renee Jordan.
And you are listening to Soul Perspectives. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. We have a special guest on the line with us. Her name is Jessica Cade. She's an international award-winning and USA Today best-selling author, born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. She had always been reading has always been a passion for her, and as a girl, Jessica enjoyed reading tales of fantasy and mystery, but always hoped to find characters that looked like her, but didn't find characters that look like her. So that's just a little bit about our guest. But as we like to do during these COVID times, we like to check in with our guests and see, how are you doing? How has this quarantine situation been for you?
I'm a hermit, so it hasn't really been that much different. I don't really spend a lot of time out in the world as it is. It's a struggle for my son. He's a kid. He wants to be with his friends, so I think that's been the hardest part about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is it? What has it been like in Chicago these past couple of months? I know in Montreal we've been sort of in and out, and maybe had some time to enjoy the summer. What has been the situation for you?
It's been the same here. They have restrictions for everybody that no one really follows that I can see, but they've been in and out of tightening up the reins. We have gone out to some of the parks recreationally, social distancing just to get my son out of the house, but we stayed in as much as possible, honestly.
Okay. And how has because you're an author, you write full time, right? That's correct.
No, not yet.
Not yet. Almost.
Yeah.
Okay. How has it been creatively for you?
It has been a little bit of a struggle just because you're in the same space, and I tend to draw inspiration. So I used to take the train into downtown and just watch people. And that's one of the ways I pick up, inspiration for characters or just, whatever I can draw from the city. I put a lot of my city in my book. So that has been a bit of a struggle because I'm using a lot more of the resources of my imagination than I typically would have to.
What would be something that you'd look for in terms of characters and reflection of characters in the people of your city?
So Chicago is so eclectic. Like, you have so many amazingly artistic people walking the streets of downtown and just taking the train, and you come in contact with people who have just this energy that kind of draws you into them. So I just see what naturally pulls me, what naturally grabs my eye. There have been quite a few people who I'm looking like, if they knew that I was writing them into these stories as, fairies and whatever, but I just look for their energy. People who stand out, who don't. I feel like they're attempting to blend into the crowd, but there's something a little special about them. Those are the people that stand out to me.
Right.
And so do you normally write them in as secondary characters, or have you ever drawn some inspiration from someone on the outside and put them in as a primary character in the book?
I've only done that once where they became I was so inspired by this person that I was like, I have to write a whole series about this person. And
they don't know, or they know?
No, he knows. So
okay.
All right. So I approached him and I was like, listen, I have this character in my brain. Now, luckily we were at a book convention, so I didn't sound as insane. But I was like, he posed for the cover of the book. I'm like, I want you to be on the cover. Like, this has to happen. And I wrote a full series based off of seeing this person in his space and was just drawn to his energy. And luckily he agreed, and he didn't wipe me off as someone crazy.
Now, normally when children are introduced to the format of reading, they're sort of introduced into more traditional style books, traditional style novels. So usually if someone develops a love for reading, then they kind of branch off into these other categories. Now, you write fantasy books. Could you tell us a little bit about what is a fantasy book, and why did you choose this type of genre to get into?
Okay, so fantasy books are it's exploring everything that we dream up, right? The things that aren't real, that we can't go out and experience in our everyday life, like vampires and dragons and things that I guess kind of wish were real, because it would make life just so much more exciting, and it gives us so many more possibilities.
I don't know if I'm going to wish about seeing a dragon when I open up. I think COVID is scared of
it. Nice. So, but it's just it's pushing the boundaries of our reality, right? I got into fantasy because of my mother. She was the sci-fi fantasy fanatic when I grew up. So my love for books came from my grandmother. My love for fantasy came from my mother. So my mother would have what she calls sci-fi Saturdays in our household, where we would just sit down and watch and take in all the movies and all the just any type of fantasy medium that she could get her hands on. And that was our Saturdays. And we would have like pizza, and it was just a thing. It was a tradition for us. So growing up and loving those stories and seeing the movies and picking up and starting to read the books, I was like, this is great, but like, where are all the Black people at? Where are the, the people of color that I see in my everyday life? I don't see them in these stories, not nearly as enough. So, it came from that. It came from growing up with my mother, who loved aliens and vampires. Now that's what I write about.
And what were some of your favorites from your childhood? Like your favorite either TV shows or books or movies?
Fantasy based, I would say, growing up, I loved Species, which is totally alien. I loved, anything vampires. That was my favorite until I saw Dracula 2000, Gerard Butler, and I was like, this is now my favorite vampire ever. But in Blade, I love Blade. Oh my God. That was like my first, oh my God, he's a vampire, he's Black, he's like a hybrid, which I write a lot of hybrids now. So it was like, that was my first, this is possible, right? And then getting my hands on books by like L.A. Banks, who was an African-American woman who wrote in this genre, and she wrote characters of color. And it was like, wait, okay, this is possible. I see myself in these books, and I'm like, but where are the others? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But that's some of my favorites. Like, I would sit in the corner all day long and just be so very happy.
Blade, that really brings back some memories. I remember when that was in the theater, and I think it was rated PG-17 or whatever here, because I remember not having the right ID to get in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I almost didn't get in. I was the last friend. I'm like, you're not going to do this to me? And he let me into the movie theater. But anyways, we digress. Tell us a little bit about reading. I mean, like, it's always a thing in the Black community in terms of, a lot of people say, oh, we don't read, or we don't read as much as we do. Have you undertaken any sort of initiatives to introduce your books to the community to sort of encourage reading?
So I've hosted a lot of local meet and greets at libraries, and I've actually went into some schools to speak with children, because I feel like that's a good age to get them where the kids I typically talk to were 7th and 8th grade heading into high school, because my material is not really appropriate for anyone younger than that, honestly. Okay. And then I also feel like they're going into high school, they're going to be thinking about what they want to be. And I think a lot of them had creative pursuits that they were so excited for, including reading and writing. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's the time that you really want to kind of help them and impress upon them that this is something that you could do, and that reading can be a part of your everyday life, and you don't have to be shunned for it. I was shunned, literally shunned as a child, because I like to read. And it was the most traumatic experience.
Who shunned you?
Oh, my family. I had, people who I thought were friends who were like, you're just always with a book. You know what I mean? And it's like, why is that a problem, So I try to reach kids at that younger age, to encourage not even just with reading and writing, but any type of pursuits creatively, because a problem that's happening locally in our schools is that they're taking away funding from all of those creative programs, right?
Yeah.
Where if you're not, playing a sport or, you know what I mean, something that's going to get the school on the scene, then it's not really given the attention that it deserves. So my goal, and I'm so mad that COVID happened, because of course I'm kind of haunted on that, was to start connecting those kids, those younger students, with mentors who are currently doing that. They're currently out and they're either indie or they're, professionally signed, whatever, but making those connections with the kids at a younger age so that they can feel, empowered and encouraged to keep up those pursuits.
And how do you move from, let's say, writing something to actually getting it published? Like, how can, like, let's say there's a young person at home and they've been doing some creative writing on their own, and they think that they might have something that's good enough that other people out there should read. Like, where do they go? What do they do?
I mean, well, there are two ways that you can do that. You can do traditional publishing, which is submitting inquiries to, big houses and hoping that someone picks it up and loves it. And if that's the way you want to go, you just have to make sure that you put that manuscript together the right way, get it edited out, never send in anything unedited, like invest in editing. And that
would be professionally edited, or
like, don't get your cousin, sister, best friend, uncle, whoever. If they are qualified to edit your stuff, feel free to get them to do it.
Okay.
But reach out to a professional editor. There are avenues where you can get, there's a site now, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but they have access to editors who used to work for the big six publishers, and now they're independent. So you can access these people now, and you can hire them to work on your stuff, and they will get your manuscripts ready for those publishing houses, right?
Mm-hmm. Who are the big six?
Oh my God. Like Harlequin, I don't even know anymore.
Random House?
Random House, yes. I can't think of them. I don't really keep up anymore with the big six.
Okay. Because you got what you need already.
I never went to the big six. I never did the research of the big six like everyone else, because what I wanted to write, what I wanted to publish, they did not want.
Okay.
Period. When I wanted to write fantasy for POC, and at the time, that was not marketable. It's becoming marketable. You're seeing it a lot more now. Mm-hmm. But at the time, what I wanted to write was not marketable. Thanks to Black Panther, Luke Cage.
I was
like
just
Netflix.
about to ask, how did Black Panther impact like your ability to move your books? If it did at
Black
all.
Panther changed the scene, right? Because here I am with my books with black faces on them for 6 years, like just pushing as hard as I can, and actually having people tell me, like, your books are great. They would probably sell better if you just like put a symbol on the front instead of the face, or change the cover, basically telling me to remove the face of my character from the book.
Right.
And
were those black people who were telling you that, or
it was some of everybody, honestly.
Okay.
There are a lot of authors who are black who have done it and they've seen success in it. So they're like, girl, you can find success if you do it this way. And I'm like, I don't want to do it that way. I write, this is my passion, and I want to stay true to that. I don't want to change my message or the reason I'm doing this to make a few extra dollars. If I have to wait a little bit for my audience to find me, that's fine. I'm okay. But when Black Panther hit the scene, everyone started searching for material for fantasy stories that were focusing on, the African diaspora or whatever. You know what I mean? They wanted to see their faces. They're like, wait a minute, we can have this now, and there's a huge fantasy community that are POC, like, we're out there. We grew up with this material. And that's when the change started happening. That's when more white authors started writing books with black faces on them, because now it's marketable. You know what I mean? Now everyone's picking up covers that have characters of color on them, because wait, there's a market for it. So for me, sitting there at the time with my 20 books that were already out and seeing the shift, I'm like, oh, here it comes. Like, this is what I've been waiting for. You know what I mean? This is what I've been pushing for. So it was amazing to see that. And right after that is when things just kind of took off for me.
That's one thing that I've been very cognizant of, because I'm an avid book lover, and when what you said about like white authors writing black characters, it's very tricky because like I've been picking up books on Native people here in Canada, and getting back and being disappointed when I'm like, oh great, I got this great book that's gonna teach me about this information about culture and so on and so forth, and then I find out that the author is white, you know. And that's one of the things that's been really disappointing, because I really want to support Black, Indigenous, and POC writers and authors, but then, you know, there's this whole appropriation of not even culture, just the face, and making it seem like it belongs to someone else. So like, how have you kind of counteracted that, if you've encountered that? Or
so I have been honest with a lot of my white author pals who come to me and they're like asking permission to write the stories almost. And I'm like, you don't need my, I mean, if you want to write that story, you write it, but make sure you get a sensitivity reader. Make sure you're not negatively impacting, you know, or putting any stereotypes in your books, because we're tired of seeing that. Make sure you do it right. I'm not going to tell you yes or no. And it's weird to be the Black friend in the room right now with the authors, because it's like, they're all like, so can we? And I'm like, I don't have the answer for you. I'm not going to say yay or nay, but if you do it right. And don't portray it as if you're someone that you're not. There was a big tip about someone, I'm not going to put any names out there, publishing books as if they were African American and they were not. You know what I mean? Hiding behind a pen name. Mm-hmm. It's like, don't do that at all, because that is not okay. Right. But it's like, make sure you represent. I mean, I'm all for it. Like, but there's now an avenue of employment that is basically for cultural sensitivity readers. They're reading books written by white people who have found that this is now profitable, but at least in some way are trying to be respectful of the stories they're writing. So I appreciate it for that. But it's a bit of a slap in the face after some of these very same authors have been telling me to take these Black faces off of my covers. And now I'm looking up.
And now they want to put it on.
Yeah.
Let's go with the trend.
Yes. And I'm like, well, wait, sis, I remember that message you sent me 2-3 years back. Like, what time?
Remember when?
You know?
Yeah. Just in case you're tuning in for the first time, we are speaking to author, writer, Jessica Cage, all the way from Chicago. We're going to take a quick break. You are listening to Soul Perspectives here on CKUT 90.3 FM.